Well, hello everyone. Pastor Will Cole here from St. Matthew Lutheran Church in Millerstown, Pennsylvania. We're affiliated with the Association of Free Lutheran Congregations. And welcome to the latest Answers with Pastor Will. So today's question is, do biblical creationists deny the laws of science? Because it's certainly an accusation that we receive. And the short answer is no. If anything, we believe that God created the laws of science, and the evidence for the laws of and the evidence, with science to me would point more towards the biblical creation model than it does to the evolutionary model. In a future video we can talk about the other perhaps theistic evolution ideas, gap theory, day age theory, that kind of stuff. Perhaps we'll discuss that next time. But for today, let's talk about some of the laws of science here. So first of all, you have the idea of biogenesis. Now this is the principle that living organisms can arrive only from other living organisms and not from non-living matter. Now, this is a true scientific law, and it is one that certainly supports the creationist model. So, biogenesis, life must come from life. Whereas if you take a look at like the Big Bang Theory and for the primeval soup, to spontaneous, generation of, a life form there, that would certainly contradict this idea of biogenesis. But for creationists, well, of course, life comes from life, from God's life, from God's being. God took dust, essentially dirt, and made a man, Adam. And then from Adam, God took a rib, made Eve. So woman came from man, and then everybody after that point came from woman. But of course, life comes from life. All right, and then another thing I'd like to briefly talk about here is the idea, it's known as the Goldilocks zone or the habitable zone. Now, with this, what we're talking about is in order for a planet to support life, everything has to be just right. So this zone, it can't be, too close to the sun, or be really hot, or too far from the sun, be really cold. If the Earth was bigger, for example, you would have a thicker atmosphere, gravity, all of that wouldn't be able to support life. If it was smaller, you wouldn't have an atmosphere. All these things go together just so that life can happen on Earth. And so to me, creationists don't deny this. If anything, this also supports evidence for a creator. Like everything that has to happen in order to have life, like that could possibly come by chance. That's something that I certainly disagree with. All right, and so this is yet another example, more evidence towards the creation side, or even like water, you need liquid water in order to have life. All right, and then one more idea that I'd like to briefly talk about here is the anthropic principle. Basically, the idea that all of this was made for man. All right, so basically, God created everything for us to have life, for us to be happy, everything we need to live, breathe, our food, clothing, everything that God gives us, we don't believe came by chance. And so this here in cosmology and philosophy of science, the anthropic principle, also known as the observation select effect, is the proposition that the range of possible observations that could be made about the universe is limited by the fact that observations are only possible in the type of universe that is capable of developing observers in the first place. So, in other words, it would seem, given everything that we observe, that the earth, that everything around, in order for life, it was as if it was made for us to be alive. And of course, you go back to Genesis 1, and that is no surprise. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And even, all the planets, we can't even see all of God's creation. I mean, he just created beyond what we could see. All the stars and, all the various planets and everything else. But with all that said, with the universe's physical laws and constants finely tuned to allow for the existence of life. Absolutely amazing that God would create all of this just for us. All right. Well, if you are going to be in the area, we are in Millerstown, Pennsylvania. It's about a half an hour west of Harrisburg. Our address is 600 Centerville Road, Millerstown, Pennsylvania, 17062. Our website is stmatthewpa.org. That's stmatthewpa.org. We have our adult Bible class in Sunday school at 9 a.m. We worship at 10. All right, so hey, God's blessings to everyone, and we'll be back next week with another Answers with Pastor Will.